Hello humans, it's just Martine and welcome to another episode of TBR Crime. TBR Crime is my bi-monthly TBR game. Blake Pradera chooses a random partner from the squad and they solve a case by moving around a randomized board. Last case did not go well. It became a cold case. We didn't solve it. So we're starting this case with 0 cool points, not a single one. So we've got to see what we can do about that. Let's start playing. Here we are for the 9th episode of TBR Crime, and all of my prompt stacks are looking a little depleted, so I hope we don't end up with a lot of prompts today because I only have so many to choose from thanks to my last round. Because every prompt that's involved in the previous round is excluded from the current round and then put back into the decks after this round. Since I had so many prompts in the last episode, I have significantly fewer than usual prompts to choose from in this episode. Before we set up our game board, we'll go ahead and pick Blake's partner for this case. This is exactly what I did not want because we have so few pink cards. So our advantage is that we can pull one of the other squad members into the case once in this episode to use their advantage. Our disadvantage is that after every pink spot on the board, we have to put another pink spot on the board. Let's go ahead and randomize the board. Okay, this is what the board is looking like. We should have enough prompts for everything unless something goes horrifically wrong, so knock on wood. Without further ado, Blake and the captain are going to get to work. Roll 1. Starting off real strong. With a clue, we get a facial composite, so we need to read a book with a person on the cover. I actually went above and beyond with this prompt because I needed to find a book with a person on the cover, but I read a book with people on the cover, plural, because I read Dating and Dragons, and I'm giving it 3.5 stars. This is the second book in a YA series that centers around Dungeons and Dragons. It's just a really cute series in general. In this one, we're following this girl who is moving to a new town. Her family is moving to the same town where her grandma lives, and she's starting at a new school. She's really nervous about making friends because her last friend group, the people she played D&D with back where she's coming from, they did not leave on a positive note. I'll say that. They very much othered her and kicked her out, and she was miserable there. And so she's very nervous about making new friends here. And on her first day, her grandma tries to stop other students to take a first day of school photo of her and her granddaughter. And this is very embarrassing for her main character. And not all the kids pay attention, but eventually there's this one guy who's like, yeah, I'll take your picture for you. And there's just something about him, but also there's something about his friend group because he's hanging out with his friend group and they're very clearly D&D people, or they might be, because at least one of them has jewelry that has, I think it's a D20 that they have. Anyway, there are dice involved. And so she's like, ooh, I want to be friends with you guys. And she ends up joining their group and being invited to play D&D with them, except they take D&D very seriously, more seriously than her last group did, because they live stream all of their games. And so they also have a couple of group rules, including the fact that you're not allowed to date somebody in the group because that has caused problems before. So to keep the live stream commitment going, that's not allowed. And when our main character joins this group, suddenly the attitude of that guy that she met changes quite a bit, in that it seems like he doesn't want her in the group. For what reason? Obviously because of this rule. And so we're following them and their tumultuous high school feelings as they go through this situation, and especially as our main character is becoming close friends with these other people and wants to have friends in this new town, but is dealing with these feelings she's developing for this guy. I love a friend group, first of all, which is another thing working in this series' favor, is that when we have people playing D&D together, we always have this friend group, found family aspect to it. So love that. Love seeing our main character get that and get good friends after the way that her last friends treated her. I also love a little like off limits aspect right? Where it's like you clearly like each other, but you cannot be together, like that trope. Compared to the first book in the series, I found the main character in this book less annoying, meaning not annoying, because there were some things I didn't particularly like about the character in the first book. This one didn't have those problems. And I'm still super excited for the next book, which is coming out, I think, in a month, maybe, from when I'm filming this, because that one involves marching band, I think, and D&D. So I'm stoked. Person on the cover, hooray. Roll 2. 2. Another clue. We found some CCTV footage. So what we're going to do is we're going to randomize every episode title from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which has inspired this game, and I'm going to pick a book inspired by the title of that episode. I broke out my random number generator and landed on episode 46, which, according to the internet, is season 3, episode 1, titled New Captain. So that's the prompt, New Captain. And for that, I went with Face Off. Because if you look at the two individuals on this cover, that man is the captain of the hockey team, and that woman is new to the hockey team. New and captain, right there on the cover. It's also a new to me series, so it double counts as new. I'm giving this book 4 stars. I had a really, really great time reading it. I ended up really rooting for our 2 characters in this one, because this is a hockey romance following these 2 individuals, one the captain of a failing NHL team, and one the first female to ever be called up to play in the NHL, and they are on the same team, but they immediately do not get along because our main male character makes some mistakes when they first meet. So initially our main female character hates his guts, but he adores her the whole time, like is immediately obsessed with her. And one of my favorite things in a romance is when we have a male character who adores how awesome the female main character is at her job and really respects her for it instead of feeling in any way threatened by it. This book had that trope in spades. Loved it. I talked to myself out loud so much reading this one, sometimes reading quotes out loud, just screaming about them, sometimes yelling things at the characters about how they felt, because our main male character is not used to having these feelings. He is, I don't think, really ever been in a long-term relationship, and so he's like, I don't know what I'm feeling right now. And I was screaming at him for so much of the book, you love her, which is one thing I think this author did really well, because a lot of times in romance books, I'm like, you're already saying love. It's been so fast, and I don't know that I felt that amount of connection and safety between you two. Love is a big word, and so sometimes that kind of yanks me out of it a little. But in this case, I was yelling at him. He loved her, and he didn't realize it. And so I thought that was really well done. I'm not sure how I felt about the plotting and pacing of this book. There were things that I think could have been done a little better, but in general, really strong start to the series. I'm really looking forward to reading more from this author. And maybe the books even get better, because I know a couple people who have read the 4th book in the series. I don't know that they've read any of the first 3 books, but they've read the 4th one and given it 5 stars. And so I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to this journey. Thanks to this really random prompt for getting me to finally read this book. Roll 3. We are just rolling in clues so far. We found some DNA at the scene. So for plus 2 points, I need to read a book with the letters D, N, and A in the title or author. I used Inside Man. I'm taking the D from inside and the NA from man to spell DNA. And I'm giving this book 3 stars. In general, it's a fun mystery, but like, is it much more than that? No. In this series, we're following this new unit at the FBI, the Patterns and Recognition Unit, which is basically made up of a bunch of people. Weirdos? They're labeled as weirdos. They all have their thing, you know, they've got their special thing that they do. And in this series, we're following them as they solve cases. At the start of this 2nd book, we watch them accidentally lose their confidential informant, and that basically is the catalyst for the rest of this particular book, where they're trying to replace their CI and figure out what they knew and why they were stopped, etc. One thing that I like about this series is that it kind of feels like reading from Dr. Spencer Reed's perspective from Criminal Minds. Like, our main character is a little Spencer Reed-esque, in my opinion. Not fully, but like got the same vibe, which Spencer Reed is my favorite character from Criminal Minds, so love that. It's also got such a distinctly gritty Miami vibe because the PAR is now stationed mainly in Miami, so they come back to Miami for all of their home stuff and then they leave for all their different cases. So you get some good time in Miami in this book, which, as a person familiar with South Florida, has a very particular vibe that I feel like is both very common in crime novels and also not. Like, there's a specific large subset of crime novels that take place in South Florida, and I've read my fair share of them, but so many of them I feel like are not FBI related ones. Like, our main characters are not FBI agents. Maybe I'm wrong and that's a very, very common thing, but I just feel like those are two distinct things. Like, we either have detectives or private investigators in the Miami area, or we have the FBI. Largely. Of course, there are always going to be some books that are an exception, but this one is both Miami and FBI. We've got the internal politics of the FBI, where the PAR unit is on thin ice in general with the FBI for many, many reasons. One of the reasons so many of these people were put onto the PAR is because they messed up somewhere else, but they've got this specific thing that they do, so the FBI doesn't want to lose them, but the FBI is also like, you go in your corner there and do your thing. So these are a general fun read, but not anything that I'm like going to write home about and say to anybody, you have to read this book series. It's just, when I want a mystery, this one is fine and fun and good, and I like the vibes. So 3 stars it is. Roll 4. Finally, a bigger number. 1, 2, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have run into a dead end. So we have to read a book published between 2010 and 2019. The book that I chose to fulfill this prompt was published in 2014, and that was The King's Men by Nora Sakovic, which I rated 3.5 stars. This is the 3rd book in the All for the Game series. Technically, the first 3 books read like a trilogy, and then we're following different characters in the rest of the book, like connected characters, but different. We're not following Neil's perspective for the rest of the books, which is a little sad, because I would have been fine continuing to follow Neil. He's still just in his freshman year at Palmetto State, but it will be exciting to see the main characters from this series in the rest of the books. There were some things that I really, really liked about this installment, and then there were the realities of the writing itself. Even some of the things that I really, really liked about this installment were overshadowed by some writing choices. For instance, for those of you who have read this series, you know that in this book there is a relationship. I'm not going to say between who, but there is a relationship, and it's one I'm invested in. I actually love this pairing, and I think it's one of the reasons people go crazy for this series. Somehow, like, the scenes written between them, there was something in the writing that was missing. One thing that this author does continuously in this series, which baffles me, is thinking she's saying so much and actually not saying nearly enough for me. I don't know if it's because there are things that are implied that I'm not catching. Surely that must be the case. But sometimes I'm like, wait, what? And that happened a lot in this book, where I was just like, I feel like you're saying a lot of words, but I'm not understanding what you're trying to convey to me. But regardless, this series is just so fun. We are following Neil, who is on the run from his father and his father's criminal network. So Neil is not his real name, and he is recruited to play NCAA XC, which is a fake sport. The author made it up. It's a combination of ice hockey and lacrosse, and he loves the sport so much that even though he is on the run, he decides he absolutely has to play for as long as he's able to before he gets caught. And this series is very much a group of misfits, found family situation. All of these are great buzzwords. So I just have a lot of fun with this series. It is completely unhinged, but I do care about the characters. And so 3.5 stars. Roll 5. 3. 1, 2, 3. Now here's where everything went downhill last episode, so let's cross our fingers. Okay, this is actually awesome. We need to write a police report, so I just need to read an obligation read, something that I'm reading for either a book club or really that's all I can think of for what an obligation read means. It's always a strategic question, which one of my obligation reads do I slot in for my obligation read prompt? And usually I feel like I go with the shelf this book, and I've done no different this time because I read 640 to Montreal, which I'm giving 3 stars. This is a mystery book, a closed-door mystery book about a woman who is on a day train from Toronto to Montreal. She is supposed to be writing the whole time, but she has had writer's block really badly. And all of a sudden, someone is dead in her train car, and they can't get out. In general, the readers of the Shelf This Book Club did not love this one. I thought it was fine. The prose itself was good. I would say the writing was good, except the writing captures so many things, including, to me, pacing, for instance, and plotting, and I don't think those things were done well, but I do think the prose itself was good. It generated tension, it was very descriptive, you felt like you were reading from a writer's perspective, especially in the sections where our main character was thinking about how she would write something, and so I did appreciate that. As far as mysteries go, this one was not very well plotted. Even the result at the end, we all found largely unsatisfying and felt like there should have been more at the end to wrap it up. Our main character figured something out based on way too little evidence, to be honest with you, and then didn't get much of a resolution at the end. Just like figured it out, had a small, subtle conversation with one person, and that was it. And the motives for that person having killed people were not good. Like, just didn't make any sense. Were really silly. The main tension from this book oddly did not come from the murders that were occurring, but instead from one secondary character who had type 1 diabetes and had no insulin with him and was going into diabetic shock. That was honestly the most stressful part of the book, which, yes, that's a stressful event, but if you read a murder mystery, I kind of anticipate the murder part of it being the stressful part, right? The fear that anybody in here could die, not just this one chronically ill person. So that was strange because we spent a lot of page time on that, and that's fine, but it was a choice that the author made that I don't think anybody particularly liked. Because you go into a mystery and you want a mystery, not a bunch of people on a train freaking out about a person who is experiencing something completely natural to them that no character particularly caused. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm not downplaying the severity of the chronic illness. It was a very stressful part of the book. But I'm just saying, plotting-wise, the murder mystery part of it should have been at least as stressful, and it just wasn't. I did like the Canada of it all. Random, but true. I did like the Canada of it all. And as a person who has ridden trains, there were some experiences that I was like, yeah. Luckily, I've never gotten stuck with a murderer on board, but it very much captured the train trip experience. So anyway, 2 points, done and dusted. Roll 6. 2, 1, 2. Blake has taken a tumble, but he's okay. Bonus! We're going to get some awesome gear and read a book whose average rating is over 4.25. That's so high for an average rating. Hopefully this means I'll get to read something awesome. For an epic 6 points, I just needed to find and read a book with a really high average rating. So I turned to Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros, which has an average rating of 4.36, which is wild. But I'm giving it 3.5 stars because I generally did have a pretty good time reading it. There were things that I liked about it, and there were things that made it not my fave. That's a 3.5 stars for me. When I read Fourth Wing, the first book in this series, I described it as divergent with dragons, and the first book definitely feels that way. And the second book, the world/conflict escalates so much based on a plot twist that happens at the end of book 1. And yet I'm happy to report that we did get some good school time in our main character's second year, regardless, because I was worried there would be absolutely no more school ever again. I really like the connections between the characters in this series. I think the found family of Fourth Wing, that's a specific group of them in the Rider Quadrant, love that whole group. I love our main character's connection with dragons. I like that our main character has some substantial things standing in her way of being the more traditional female heroine, in that she has some chronic illness things that make things harder for her. Holding these two things, that you can get stronger and you can still have things standing in your way that make it harder for you to reach a certain level compared to other people. And at the end of the day, when we really get down to it, I appreciate the romance in this series, especially in this second book. I feel like we were having some conversations between our main character and the love interest that we just don't get in many romantic subplots, like serious conversations about how to make their relationship stronger and how they can learn to trust one another and be secure partners. And I was blown away by that fact. That was diminished by the fact that things kept happening that forced them to have these conversations over and over again. It felt like the same conversations. It felt like we were playing a game of like, how will I ever trust him again? Okay, I trust him. How will I ever trust him again? Okay, I trust him. How will I ever trust him again? Etc., 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 etc. And I think that gets down to one of the issues I had most with this book in general, was that it felt like the same conflicts over and over and over and over again, with just, slightly different spin on them, but the same root problems every time, not just in the romantic subplot, but also in the larger plot. It felt like just the same things happening over and over and over again for so many pages. Because I went with the first page count on Goodreads, I say that I read this book and it was 623 pages, which is already a lot. However, if you look at the Kindle edition of the book that I actually read, it suggests that it is over 800 pages. I did read the majority of it yesterday, so its repetitive nature did stand out to me, and I really don't believe the book had to be as long as it was. I truly and deep in my core feel like things could have been cut. Overall, I had a fun time, but at times it dragged and did the same things over and over again, which got a little frustrating. But I still like the dynamics in this series, and obviously liked it enough to read so much of it yesterday, even though I was doing it for Squash That Series. But like, if you're really hating a book, there's only so long you can spend reading it. I spent like over 8 hours reading this book yesterday, so it had to be good enough, right? Regardless, now I have some awesome gear, which I think this book is actually such a good pick for this prompt because the characters do have some awesome gear in this book series. So I am now no different. I have awesome gear. Next roll. Roll 7. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Another bonus. We're going to create the perfect backstory, and we have to read a book that has a character name in the title. So one of the characters in the book, their name is in the title. Probably the main character. But 6 points, that's great. I didn't just go for any character name in the title. I went for one of my favorite fictional characters' names in the title because I read Ender in Exile by Orson Scott Card. Ender being the nickname, not the official first name, of Ender Wiggin from Ender's Game. And I'm giving this book 3 stars. This book is interesting because when the series was originally written, the second book was going to be Speaker of the Dead, but there's this weird and absurd time gap in between Ender's Game and Speaker for the Dead. It's like 3,000 years or something. And so eventually the author was like, I'm going to write a book that takes place right after Ender's Game, and this is that book. However, when I found that out, I was super excited for it, and I imagined we'd get just more of Ender as he was in the first original book, and that is not what we got. In fact, in general, this series, although it surrounds Ender, really spirals out from him in general. And so I would say one of the weaknesses of every other book in this series compared to the first book is that we're not exclusively reading from Ender's perspective. Now, in the first book, we get some other people's perspectives through like interviews and emails and things like that, but we are following Ender from start to finish of the book. And the reason I love that is because Ender is a genius. He is recruited to battle school when he is 6 years old, and by the end of the first book, he's like 11, And we're picking up right after that. So he starts really, really young, but he is a genius. And one thing that I love more than anything in a book is reading from a super smart character's perspective and seeing how they think about the world. That's why Sherlock Holmes is one of my favorite detectives, and that's why Ender's Game is one of my favorite books. And although we get some of Ender's brilliance in here, we also follow a lot of other characters who I just don't care about. I don't want to be reading from their perspective. I don't find them interesting. And I honestly think it disrupts the flow of the narrative. I just want to be reading from Ender's perspective and see him being a genius about everything. That's what I want. That's not what I got. There were some things I liked about it, some good quotes. There were some very questionable things. This author has some interesting views, and I feel like some of them might have come through in this book. Anyway, so 3 stars. In general, there were things I liked. I still love Ender Wiggin. On the other hand, it did not give me enough Ender Wiggin for a 450-page book with his name on the cover. Roll 8. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bonuses all over the place, just clues and bonuses. We're going to create the perfect backstory and read a book that has multiple perspectives. Yes, we just created a perfect backstory, but clearly it wasn't perfect enough. We're creating a different perfect backstory. Or maybe it's a backstory for a different person. Either way, it's incredible. Multiple perspective. This book has so many POVs, I felt like it was the perfect fit for this perfect backstory. And that's City of Dragons by Robin Hobb, which is the 3rd book in the 4th series in the Realm of the Elderlings universe, which puts the epic in epic fantasy. In this current series, the Rainwild Chronicles, we are on a mission to bring dragons elsewhere. Bring them elsewhere. Settle them elsewhere. I feel like I can't say anything aside from that because we're so far into the universe now. But City of Dragons does imply there's dragons, so I don't feel like that's a spoiler. I don't know. Weird to tiptoe around. Point is, I read it, and I'm giving it 3 stars. In general, this series has not been my favorite of the Realm of the Elderlings, and I think that's a pretty common feeling. It's still good. I mean, I love Robin Hobb's writing and characters, but this one is just not as good as the others. I feel like I'm not as invested in a lot of our characters as I am in characters in other series within this universe. I mean, nothing will compare to how close I feel to Fitz and the Fool, because we follow them through multiple series in the universe. And so any series where they don't appear is going to feel like there's some distance with the main characters, especially because those books where Fitz is the main character are not told from multiple perspectives. They are told from Fitz's perspective, and yet things that aren't from Fitz's perspective are told from basically everybody's perspective, including this series. I definitely feel like there are some tensions building towards interesting places that I've been waiting to see since the start of this series. I'm loving all the connections to the other series in the universe and wondering how they'll come together, if they'll come together. That's fun. But yeah, in general, it's good. But is it great? Roll 9. 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Blue. We're going to take an action and canvas the neighborhood, and I'm going to read a recommended book. For a recommended book, I thought I'd go with something that feels like it's been recommended over and over and over again to me, because not only have a ton of my friends given this book 5 stars, but also it has ended up on no less than 3 favorite books of the year lists over the past couple of years for the friends who I do that challenge with. Every time that it comes up, I want to read it, but I haven't been able to yet. So this is its time to shine. I read Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. I'm giving it 4.5 stars. It was very, very, very good. And I think the concept of being harmless to one another is going to sit with me for a long time. It was not perfect, hence the 4.5 stars. In this one, we're following 2 ER physicians. One has been at this hospital for a long time, and the other, we're meeting him just as it's his first day at this hospital. He has left his last hospital because of some very tricky relationship things, so he's trying to start over. Our main female character has gone through a brutal divorce and doesn't feel like she can trust anyone ever again. The two of them get off to kind of a rocky start based off of some miscommunication, but because our main male character has social anxiety, he starts writing our main female character letters to try and express himself better. And their friendship goes from there. And it's this super sweet book with so many tropes, with the dislike at the beginning and the strong friendship in the middle and the fake dating situation and all of it combined. Very, very cute, and such good social anxiety representation and discussions about what partnership actually looks like when somebody is going through mental health struggles like that. The ending did not go down how I wanted it to. I think the downhill slide started somewhere around the 80% mark, where the characters made a decision at one point that I felt like was crazy of them to make. I felt like things escalated in a really weird way at a really weird moment, and I disliked that so much. It yanked me out of the story for a minute. And then I was just really frustrated with the main characters for the last 20%, as they wouldn't communicate. Mainly the main female character, as she would not communicate about what she was feeling and thinking. And she was just having a hard time processing all of those things. I totally understand why she was, but it was very frustrating to me. I was like, just talk to him. And it goes back to this idea that I've talked about with my therapist before of like, unfortunately, the truth is that the only way you can have someone prove to you that they are trustworthy is by giving them the opportunity to be trusted. You inherently have to take some risk to do that. Our main female character was having a lot of trouble with that idea. But I really loved these two characters. I loved them together. I loved the letters while they lasted, but as my friend Ruby said in her review, not enough letters. I agree with that statement. It was just very, very sweet. So 4.5 stars. And thanks to all of my friends who have ever, in some way or another, recommended this book to me. 3. Blake is tired, but the case is indeed closed. Thanks, Blake. Compared to the last 2 rounds, this one was so mercifully short. So I'm glad to be here. Happy to say that the case is closed, and we officially have 27 cool points, which of course is not nearly as many as I would like, considering what's going to have to be happening by the end of the year, but it's not 0. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up and comment down below what was your favorite prompt from this round, and subscribe for more bookish and college lifestyle content. And until next time, bye humans, bye.